It started, as most ridiculous HOA stories do, with something small, stupidly small. My 10-year-old son, Max, had been excited all week about the neighborhood pool reopening for the summer. He had his goggles ready, a fresh pair of swim trunks, and had even memorized his new trick, a double cannonball, complete with a twist. That sunny Saturday morning, he ran ahead of me, practically dragging his towel behind him like a superhero's cape. We got there just before noon. It was already crowded, the usual suspects lounging under umbrellas, nursing iced teas and passive-aggressive glances. I waved politely, nodded to Mrs. Peterson, who always wore a wide-brimmed sun hat and a frown, and settled into a chair with a book. Max dashed to the diving board. 1 jump. 2 jumps. Then the big one. His cannonball was textbook. Perfect form, big splash, loud laughter. A couple of kids cheered. I smiled, proud and relaxed for once. That's when I heard the shriek. Mrs. Peterson, now soaked from the shoulders down, stood like she'd just been slimed on a game show. Her sun hat dripped onto her perfectly coordinated beach bag. She didn't say anything at first, just glared. Then she slowly turned toward me and said, "This is why we have rules." I apologized immediately. I even handed her a towel. Max, clearly embarrassed, said sorry too. But it wasn't enough. She stormed off like it was a courtroom exit and she'd just lost a custody battle. I didn't think much of it, at least not until Monday morning, when the email arrived. Due to recent behavioral concerns, your access to the community pool has been suspended pending further review by the HOA board. You will not be permitted to use pool facilities until further notice. I stared at the screen, dumbfounded. Suspended? For a splash? No warning, no phone call, not even a conversation. Just revoked access. The email sounded like I'd been caught lighting fireworks in the baby pool. Max didn't understand either. But we said sorry, he said quietly. I didn't know what to tell him. I tried to handle it the adult way. I emailed the board. I requested a meeting. I even offered to have Max write a formal apology, complete with an illustrated, "No Cannonball Zone" poster he made himself. No response. The next board meeting was 2 weeks later. I showed up in a collared shirt with a peace offering tray of chocolate chip cookies. It was held in the clubhouse, same place they do the annual chili cook-off, only this time it felt more like a courtroom. 5 board members sat at a folding table, clipboards and pens ready. No one made eye contact. "I just want to clarify what happened," I began, calmly. "It was an accident." He was excited. "He's 10. And we really didn't mean to upset anyone." There was a pause. Then Mrs. Peterson, naturally seated at the center like she was presiding over a royal inquisition, spoke up. "It's not about one incident. It's about setting a precedent. If we allow behavior like this, the pool becomes a playground." I blinked. "It is a playground. For children. An unsafe one," she replied. I kept my cool. With respect, no one was hurt. And I think banning us without notice or discussion was a bit extreme. Mr. Lanning, the board treasurer and part-time neighborhood drone enthusiast, added, "We followed standard disciplinary procedure." I wanted to laugh. What disciplinary procedure? This wasn't the NFL. In the end, they didn't lift the ban. They didn't even vote. They just stared at me like I was the problem. As I packed up the uneaten cookies and walked out, it hit me, they didn't care. This wasn't about safety or rules. It was about control. What made it worse was what happened next weekend. I passed by the pool on my morning run, and there they were, Mrs. Peterson's grandkids. 3 of them. Jumping, splashing, shrieking with laughter. And yes, doing cannonballs. I stopped at the fence and just watched, my jaw clenched. No one yelled. No email was sent. No banishment occurred. That was it. That was the moment something inside me clicked. I wasn't just frustrated anymore, I was insulted. Humiliated. Singled out for no reason other than pettiness and power tripping. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't just about Max's splash. It was about a system of neighborhood politics where the loudest people with the most time on their hands made all the decisions, and everyone else had to take it. That night, I poured a glass of bourbon, sat down at my laptop and started researching. I didn't even know what I was looking for. Maybe a loophole. Maybe some obscure HOA clause that let me appeal. But what I found was better, way better. Turns out, the HOA didn't own the pool. They leased it. I blinked at the screen for a good minute before reading the sentence again. This facility is operated under agreement with Blue Horizon Property Management, LLC. A quick search pulled up the company's website. They managed pools, tennis courts, and community centers across 3 counties. According to an old article I found, they had been looking to divest some of their smaller properties due to overhead costs. I sat back in my chair, heart racing, the glass of bourbon untouched. If they didn't own the pool, then maybe someone else could. I clicked, "Contact us." My fingers hovered over the keys for a second, then typed, *hello. I'm a homeowner in the Willow Creek Estates community. I'm interested in discussing the future of your facility at /address of the pool. Please let me know if it's for sale, *. I hit send. Then I turned to Max, who had wandered into the room in his pajamas. "Hey, buddy," I said, smiling. "How would you like it if we owned the pool?" He blinked. "Wait, what?" I grinned. "You'll see." 2 days after I sent the email, I got a response from someone named Cheryl at Blue Horizon Property Management. Her message was short, formal, but intriguing. "Hi Mr. Thompson, thank you for your inquiry. The pool property in Willow Creek Estates is indeed under review for divestment. If you're seriously interested in purchasing, we'd be happy to schedule a call and provide more details." That was all I needed to hear. I replied immediately and set up a call for the following morning. I barely slept that night. I wasn't just buying a pool, I was buying leverage. The next day, Cheryl answered right on time, her voice calm and professional. She explained that Blue Horizon had been leasing the pool facility to the HOA for the past 14 years. The lease renewed automatically every 3 years unless either party terminated it. Apparently, the HOA had always been late with payments, complained about upkeep costs, and had even asked to downgrade some features like the poolside furniture and cleaning services. "We've been trying to offload that location for years," Cheryl admitted with a chuckle. "But we haven't had any serious bites. It's not a profitable site for us." I tried not to sound too eager. "So what are you asking for it?" She paused. $85,000. That would include all existing infrastructure, the pool itself, pump systems, changing rooms, maintenance equipment, fencing, the outdoor grills, and the furniture. I almost laughed. Don't get me wrong, $85,000 is still a chunk of money. But I'd been saving for a down payment on a rental property. I had the money sitting there, untouched. What I'd be buying wasn't just concrete and water. It was control. I told her I needed a day or two to consider and hung up. Then I stared at my savings account for a long time. I thought about the HOA board, their smug faces when they told me my kid was a threat to pool safety. I thought about Mrs. Peterson, soaked and outraged, declaring war over a splash. And then I thought about how poetic it would be to own the very thing they had tried to keep from me. I called Cheryl back 2 days later and told her I was in. She was surprised, but she moved fast. We set up a formal meeting with their legal department, and they sent over a draft sale agreement. I had it reviewed by a lawyer friend who owed me a favor, and everything looked solid. The paperwork took a little over 3 weeks to finalize. There were inspections, signatures, escrow transfers, and so much digital ink I thought my laptop might catch fire. But I didn't care. I was on a mission, and every click to sign brought me closer to sweet, chlorinated justice. The day I officially became the new owner of the Willow Creek pool, I drove over early in the morning before anyone arrived. I had already called a locksmith, who met me at the gates and changed all the locks. Then I posted 2 fresh signs on the gates, printed on glossy foam board. Private property. Access by invitation only. Trespassers will be prosecuted, ****. It was beautiful. I pulled a lounge chair to the middle of the deck, poured myself a tall glass of lemonade, and just sat there for a while, soaking it all in. Then, right on cue, came the parade of lawn chairs and pool floaties. It was a sunny Saturday, after all. The first group arrived around 10, mostly moms with toddlers, sunscreen bottles, and snacks. They walked up to the gate, saw the sign, rattled the lock, and stood there confused. I watched quietly from my seat, sunglasses on, sipping lemonade like a king. And then came the board. Mrs. Peterson marched up in her usual beach robe and oversized hat, flanked by Mr. Lanning and 2 other regulars from the HOA brigade. They looked like they were storming Normandy. They saw the sign. They saw me. And then they really saw me. "What is the meaning of this?" she snapped, hands on hips. I took off my sunglasses slowly and stood up. "Morning, Mrs. Peterson. Fancy seeing you here." She squinted at me like I was part of a hallucination. "You can't just lock the gate. This is community property." I pulled a folded sheet of paper from my pocket and handed it to her. "Actually, it's not. It's mine now. Here's the deed. Feel free to have a look." She blinked at it. Mr. Lanning leaned in and read it aloud like he was deciphering ancient hieroglyphs. There was silence. For a few glorious seconds, complete silence. Then, "This is outrageous," she said, practically hissing. "We'll take this up with the board." "I am taking it up with the board," I said, grinning. "Consider this the formal announcement. The pool is under new ownership. Effective immediately." They looked completely dumbfounded. Like they had been handed a Monopoly card that said you owe your nemesis rent. "We had a community contract," Mr. Lanning began. "Leased," I cut in. "Not owned. Lease ended. Blue Horizon didn't want it anymore. I did. That's business." They didn't say another word. They just walked away in stunned silence, whispering furiously among themselves. I watched them go, their flip-flops slapping angrily against the sidewalk. It was one of the most satisfying moments of my life. That afternoon, I invited a few friends over, people who'd always been decent neighbors, the ones who brought over casseroles when my wife was sick or helped trim trees after the last storm. Their kids played in the pool while we grilled burgers and listened to old rock songs. Max finally got to show off his cannonball again, and this time, he landed it perfectly. No shrieks. Just applause. As the sun dipped low, I stood at the gate and watched a few more board members arrive, hoping to talk, negotiate, reclaim. But they stopped at the fence and stared in disbelief, realizing that the kingdom they ruled with laminated signs and passive-aggressive emails had been conquered. And all it took was one splash. The next morning, I woke up early and brewed a fresh pot of coffee, feeling like a kid on Christmas morning. I wasn't dreaming. I really owned the pool. And today would be the first full day under my new rules, or rather, under the absence of theirs. I pulled into the parking lot around 9 a.m. with a Bluetooth speaker, a folding chair, and a small sign I'd made just for fun, now serving, Karma, iced and chlorinated. I hung it on the inside of the pool gate where only people outside could see it. It was petty. I knew that. But it was also deeply satisfying. By 10 o'clock, the first wave of poolgoers arrived. A few families I didn't know wandered up with towels slung over their shoulders and inflatable rafts under their arms. They read the new signs, tugged at the gate, and frowned. Some looked around like maybe a lifeguard would appear to open the lock. Then came the confused murmurs. Is the pool closed? Why is it locked? Who changed the locks? And then they saw me, sitting under a big umbrella, reading a book, my cooler beside me, sipping from a glass with a lemon wedge. I was clearly not maintenance staff. One dad finally walked up to the fence and asked, "Hey man, you work here or something? Any idea what's going on with the pool?" I looked up with a polite smile. "Oh, I don't work here. I own the place." His eyebrows shot up. "Wait, what?" "I bought it," I said casually, like I was talking about picking up milk from the store. "The HOA didn't own it. It was leased. I bought it last week." He blinked, nodded slowly, then turned to explain it to his confused wife, who looked like she thought he was making it up. A few people left, disgruntled. A few stuck around, trying to get a better look at me like I was some mythological creature. But the real show began about 20 minutes later. Mrs. Peterson arrived in full regalia, sun hat, cover-up robe, oversized sunglasses, and that same air of neighborhood royalty she always carried. Behind her came the rest of the HOA board members, Mr. Lanning in his tucked-in golf shirt, Janine from Unit 4B who always wore a whistle for no apparent reason, and another couple I recognized from last month's "Vote No on Solar Panels" campaign. They marched up to the gate like they were on official business, expressions ranging from smug to mildly irritated. Until they realized the gate was locked. Mrs. Peterson rattled the handle, then turned to me. "Can you open this, please? We're here to address this situation." I stood up, stretched a little, and walked over to the fence. "Sure thing," I said, grinning. "But first, just to be clear, you're here as guests or as representatives of the HOA?" She frowned. "What difference does it make?" "Big difference," I said. "Because if you're here as guests, you'll need an invitation. And if you're here as board members, well, there's nothing for you to govern here anymore. You're on private property." "You can't be serious," Mr. Lanning said. "This is a community pool." "It was," I replied. "Now it's mine." He pointed a finger at the sign. "This is outrageous. You can't just take away community access like that." I pulled out a laminated copy of the deed from a folder and held it up. "This says I can. You revoked my access." "I just returned the favor." Mrs. Peterson's jaw tightened. "This is highly irregular. We'll be speaking with the HOA legal team." I nodded. "You do that." I already had my lawyer review everything before I signed. "You'll find it's all perfectly legal. The lease expired. I bought the pool fair and square." End of story. Janine, still wearing her whistle, stepped forward. "We need access to host our water safety class next week." "Good news," I said, pointing to the sign. "You're welcome to book the pool, just like anyone else. Rental starts at $500 for the first hour. $750 if you want exclusive access." They looked at me like I'd slapped them with a pool noodle. "This is extortion." Peterson snapped. "No," I said, sipping my drink. "This is capitalism." She stormed off without another word, the others trailing behind, whispering like middle schoolers after a cafeteria brawl. I didn't stop them. I didn't need to. The seed was planted. Over the next few days, word spread like wildfire. The community Facebook group exploded with posts. Some angry, some incredulous, a few absolutely hilarious. Someone called me the Chlorine King. Another posted a meme of me holding a beach chair like a sword, standing over a fallen HOA board. A few neighbors came by just to shake my hand. Of course, there was backlash too. A few die-hard HOA loyalists called me selfish, said I was dividing the community. But I didn't care. For every angry comment, there were 2 more from people thanking me for finally standing up to the board's nonsense. People who'd had their lawns fined for wildflowers, or been told their holiday decorations violated visual harmony standards. I started getting messages from neighbors, people I barely knew, asking if they could still swim. I said yes to anyone who'd been kind, reasonable, or just not a jerk. I didn't charge friends. I only charged board members and their closest cronies. And only if they really wanted in. By the second weekend, I'd held a pool party for my son's birthday, a Friday movie night with a giant inflatable screen, and even rented the space out for a local swim instructor. Between donations, rentals, and just good vibes, the pool was finally being used the way it should have been all along, by people who appreciated it. The HOA board, meanwhile, was stuck planning alternative recreational events. I heard the first one was a community birdwatching walk. 8 people showed up. One of them was bitten by a squirrel. They kept trying to negotiate, offering to partner with me to co-manage the pool. They suggested a joint use agreement. Even floated the idea of buying it back at a reasonable price, less than what I paid. I declined every time with a smile. I wasn't doing this out of spite anymore. I was doing it because, for the first time, I felt like the neighborhood was mine too. Not something controlled by 5 people behind clipboards and bylaws, but a space for actual neighbors to relax, laugh, and live. And every time Max did a cannonball, I felt like I'd made the right decision. A few weeks after I became the proud owner of the pool, things had settled into a strange new rhythm. The HOA board was quieter than ever, probably licking their wounds and trying to figure out their next move. Meanwhile, the pool had become what it was always meant to be, a gathering place for people who just wanted to enjoy themselves without stepping on invisible landmines of community rules. I'd created a simple online sign-up system for access. Nothing fancy, just a Google form where residents could request pool use. If I recognized the name and they had a clean track record, translation, not a board member or one of their pet complainers, I'd send them the gate code for the week. If not, well, I didn't respond. Every Saturday, I hosted an open house swim, free for families and friends. I called it Splash Saturdays. We played music, grilled food, let the kids go wild. The energy was incredible. I started meeting neighbors I'd never spoken to before, people who'd kept to themselves for years because the HOA had made them feel like guests in their own homes. One guy told me he'd been fined $50 for having wind chimes on his porch. Another woman had her bird feeder removed because it encouraged pests. I didn't just own the pool now. I had accidentally become the neighborhood's unofficial mayor, therapist, and DJ. But the HOA wasn't done. Of course they weren't. About a month after my takeover, I received a certified letter in the mail with the familiar Willow Creek Estates letterhead. It was a cease and desist order, claiming I was operating a commercial enterprise in a residential zone and that my activities surrounding the pool were in violation of local ordinances. I read the letter twice. Then I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my coffee. First of all, I wasn't running a business. No profits, no fees unless you were on my special list. Secondly, the pool was technically private property not bound by HOA restrictions, it had always been leased, not owned. And third, well, let's just say I was ready. I forwarded the letter to my lawyer friend, Sarah, who had reviewed the original sale. She called me back 15 minutes later and said, "They're bluffing. This is the legal equivalent of shaking an empty threat can." Should I respond? I asked. "No need," she said. "But if you want to have some fun, I could write them a polite letter pointing out how they just threatened legal action over property they never controlled." Write it, I said, grinning. Make it classy. We sent the letter a few days later. It was short, professional, and absolutely devastating. It included a notarized copy of the deed, reference to their own previous lease agreements, and a friendly reminder that any further attempt to misrepresent ownership could constitute harassment. That was the last I heard from them directly. But the fallout? That was something else. Over the next month, 2 board members resigned. One of them, Janine, the whistle lady, posted a long rant on Facebook about how ungrateful the neighborhood was and how people no longer respected authority. She claimed she had worked tirelessly for the betterment of Willow Creek and had been personally attacked by an organized smear campaign. Most people just responded with laughing emojis. With the board flailing, neighbors started organizing on their own. Someone set up a community gardening group that didn't require board approval. Another guy offered free lawn care services for elderly residents, no sign-offs or inspections needed. People were happy. More connected. More relaxed. And it all traced back to one ridiculous decision to revoke my pool access. One afternoon, I spotted Mrs. Peterson walking her tiny dog past the pool. She slowed near the gate, looked in, and saw the group of kids doing cannonballs, the parents laughing, music playing softly in the background. She didn't say anything. Just stood there for a while. I walked up to the fence. "Beautiful day," I said. She turned, surprised. "Yes. It is. You're welcome to come in, you know. I don't bite." She looked genuinely unsure. "Even after everything?" I shrugged. "You were wrong about me. About my kid. About what this pool is supposed to be. But people can change. You're welcome to come see what it looks like when things actually work." She hesitated. For a moment, I thought she might accept the olive branch. But then she shook her head, gave a tight smile, and walked away. It was okay. Not everyone's built for change. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the rooftops and the pool sparkled in that perfect golden hour light, Max came up beside me. "Hey, Dad." "Yeah, bud? Are we gonna do this forever?" I looked around. The chairs were full of people I liked. No one was arguing about pool toys or enforcing bogus fines. The grills were sizzling. There were no security patrols, no laminated rule cards duct-taped to the fence. Just real people, enjoying themselves. "I don't know about forever," I said. "But we're gonna do this for as long as we can." He nodded. "It's the best summer ever." "Yeah," I said. "Yeah, it is." That night, after everyone left and I was locking up, I stood at the edge of the pool and looked out across the still water. I thought about how close I came to just accepting what the HOA had done. How easy it would have been to complain on Facebook and do nothing. But instead, I'd pushed back. And by doing that, by buying a pool they didn't think I could, I didn't just get revenge. I got my neighborhood back. I turned off the lights, locked the gate, and walked to my car with a smile on my face. Because nothing feels better than turning the tables. And doing it with cannonballs.